Hi, I'm Mel. So let's talk about the Louis Theroux Manosphere documentary. Okay, I have a long-standing interest in the Manosphere. I don't know why. I think I've just always been interested in why people do what they do, and especially those who harm others. I have experience working with perpetrators and offenders, but I think my interest in the Manosphere probably started maybe 15 years ago or something. There was different people involved in it at the end. There was this guy called Roosh V. I think he's now like a born again Christian or something. He's no longer in the limelight in that sense anyway. But they don't last very long, these influencers. Somebody else comes in to take their place after so long, but it's always the same kind of views, always the same kind of rhetoric, and they've always got something to sell, be it books or courses or. But this is quite a small section of the Manosphere. So the Louis Theroux documentary, I think, was actually, I'd call it more just the pyramid scheme salesman pickup artist style part of the Manosphere, of which is probably quite small. I mean, they do have a lot of influence on others, but I think there's probably, it's probably quite small. The rest of the Manosphere is probably more normal people in some ways, potentially harmful people in other ways, but also lots of subsections as well of the Manosphere. I've not been in it, so I'm not an expert in it. I've just kind of, read a fair bit about it because I'm interested. So yeah, I'm not an expert, but there is, we all heard of incels. Probably heard of incels, so involuntary celibates. This is one sort of subsection of the Manosphere. There's another one called men going their own way, who've decided that they just don't need women and want nothing to do with women at all. There are other subsections, probably lots that I don't know about as well. And the lot of these men in this actually don't like the alphas. They don't like these kind of ones that would have been called pickup artists. I don't know if they really call them that anymore. But these ones, like in the documentary. So the documentary is really just about a few influencers, a few grifters. They sell their courses, they do their stuff online, and I genuinely believe that they don't really care what they say. I don't think they really even believe in what they say sometimes, because it is all about making money. So although they're anti-establishment, they are actually sadly doing exactly the same as capitalism does, right? This whole world is just full of hypocrisies. And I think the documentary was there to kind of be like, well, yeah, let's just look at these few guys, let them speak for themselves. I mean, that's Louis Theroux's thing, isn't it? I am a fan of his generally, and this isn't a critique of this documentary. I just think that it's not very broad. So he sort of had this like, let it just speak for himself, and they'll make themselves look silly. They kind of did. So I think when I kind of had this approach when I first like got into stuff to do with the Manosphere. I was like writing things, and I went to like this kind of open mic night with this like PowerPoint to go in with all these clips of, look at the terrible things they say, look at what they've done, look how terrible they are. And I guess it's trying to shine a light on it and get other people on board, right? And either people are like, yeah, this is terrible, yeah, we're angry about it, or they don't really care, and it doesn't go much further than that. But I think it was just the process that I was in at the moment, so work at the moment, at the time then, at the moment of, like, I don't edit these videos, by the way, so you're just getting this. But that was just the process I was in at the time, I was outraged by it, absolutely outraged, and needed an outlet for that. And then I think as I learned a little bit more, I realised that wasn't necessarily that helpful. I mean, it's what I needed to do, but it wasn't really going anywhere. It wasn't really helping anything. And certainly with things that kind of commentary doesn't help anybody in the Manosphere. In fact, it's only going to make them worse. So although, Louis Theroux's got this kind of thing of, yeah, does Harrison look silly when he's being told off by his mom, and is that quite satisfying? Yes, it is tempting to mock them. They make it easy for us, but ultimately that's probably going to make it worse, because under all of this, with a lot of these men, is a lot of shame. And also a lot of people who look up to them in the Manosphere will also be feeling a lot of shame and potentially have quite fragile sense of identity and self-worth. I think there's a lot of confidence issues in the Manosphere. and a lot of body image and eating issues and exercising issues, I would think, as well, which is where my kind of two worlds meet on this, I think, because I'm an eating disorder therapist and because of my experience in domestic abuse and sexual violence. So yeah, this is also where the problem with the documentary comes in, is they didn't really label anything important. They didn't, well, they don't know how to label it, but they trivialized some big issues. So it's fair enough being like, you know, look how terrible these guys are. Look, let's take the piss out of them a little bit. But what that did then was it ignored the fact that this is actually about sexual exploitation of women. This is, in the documentary, there was coercive control in relationships. There was domestic abuse going on, coercive control, one-sided monogamy, where the wife's not allowed to speak on camera. All of this is part of a controlling relationship. And this is just what we're seeing. We can't imagine what's happening when cameras aren't rolling as well. That really concerns me. There's a lot of underlying risk and red flags here that really needed to be highlighted. And somebody was assaulted in the documentary as well. Doesn't seem like the police were called. I don't know. Even if this person is a predator or not, that does not matter. In my opinion, it doesn't help to. It doesn't help at all. People trying to catch predators in that way. It doesn't make it okay. Some very, very important issues that could have been highlighted that weren't named, that should have been named. You know, the real harm here is not being named, and the people being harmed are people in the manosphere as well. You know, young or vulnerable people. There's a lot of, particularly in incel communities, there is research now to show that there are people struggling with their mental health normally. I would think that there's probably a lot of men and boys potentially in there who are very anxious, or who've been bullied at school, or who just have really major confidence and self-esteem issues. A lot of neurodivergent kids as well, just looking for a space to belong. And they've got this community that is then going to welcome them with open arms. And why wouldn't you go into that? Why wouldn't you? Of course you're going to. It's safe. It's online. People are you know, saying the things that you want to hear, probably. It's validating. So it's understandable to me why people get into this. I mean, there's also systemic things that make this happen. It's interesting in the documentary that some of the men in it didn't seem to come from money. I think maybe they've grown up in families where finances were difficult, and it instilled a lot of fear in them of like, oh my God, we really have to find a way to make money. If you add masculinity standards into that as well, if I have to be a provider for my family, and how much pressure that puts on them. This is also why it doesn't help if we mock guys like this as well, because usually that mockery is stuff that is gonna, it's only going to reinforce the gender roles, which are a big part of this anyway. There are such high standards of masculinity that these men feel that they have to live up to, and like I said, the shame underneath that as well will only be making it worse and worse. If with any of this kind of critique, you know, that's what I realized in a way when I was just really angry about it, or would, you know, use mockery as a way of dealing with it. I'm not saying we shouldn't. That's still, you know, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But it because I was being led into a place where I actually wanted to work with these people as well. Now, I think that therapy would be very beneficial actually for a lot of people in the manosphere, because they're looking to build confidence. A lot of them will go into this just looking for gym tips or confidence tips, or how to be more confident, or anxiety tips, you know. And then they're actually being exploited from that, when actually what they're really looking for is support. Sadly, I think a lot of them wouldn't go for therapy, because therapy is probably seen as quite a women's thing to do. Potentially, it's quite female dominated. It's also all based in empathy and compassion and everything that they're told is weak. So they're unlikely to go for therapy. Otherwise, I would absolutely love to work with anyone in the manosphere at all. I just think it's very unlikely that I'll get them. Maybe if there's male therapists out there, maybe people who've escaped the manosphere themselves, if they then then become therapists, what an opportunity maybe to provide that service for people leaving. People who want to get out, because people do get out of the manosphere. I've seen stories online of people leaving, and it tends to be when they've realised the hypocrisy of it, or that they've been sold something that was just an empty promise. I mean, a lot of this is also wellness grifting culture as well. They're saying, you can look like me, you can be like me. It's packaging happiness and selling it. It's basically like diet culture. It's just the same as diet culture. And when people realize that either fails or doesn't happen for them, for where there's a few influencers that have managed to make it, there's going to be a load of men who think, I'm going to go viral, I'm going to be an influencer, and then social media is what it is, right? Nobody's gonna, no one watches stuff. It's like screaming into a void. You need to put a lot of time and effort, or be quite lucky, I think, to be able to go that far. So what are we left with then? With men with low self-esteem in the first place, whose self-esteem is now even lower because they failed, and they're probably going to blame themselves for that, or just spend more money on it as well. It is really, really like diet culture. thinking about it. And I think it just comes to a certain point, like diet culture, where you just realise that doesn't work, or you get sick of it, or you realise it isn't helping, or for them, maybe they realise that they can actually, that women aren't that terrible, and maybe they don't need to be blamed for absolutely everything. In terms of prevention, I know there's a lot of talk about doing things in schools, and when adolescence came out, show adolescence in schools. No, we don't need to do that. But we can probably talk about maybe what healthy relationships look like. We can do some work around dismantling gender roles as well, and pressures, and of course media literacy. And I think there's some great people trying to do this in schools, but it's quite difficult, obviously, because of time and funding and everything like that. I think we as a society, there are some societal things in terms of the way that we enforce gender roles still, which can be quite unhelpful with it. It is a longer term cultural change that I think we need to be able to help with this overall. I mean, I can't give a simple answer as to exactly what we can do really in this, because I think there are already people trying to do great work in this field, and ultimately it is a product of our society when people like this, when these influencers in this documentary come along, and the next ones will follow, and they will keep following suit in that. Until something else comes along. I don't really want to end on this bit because it sounds pretty bleak now. I'm just in this. I think understanding communities and understanding this for everyone, for parents as well, is particularly helpful on a deeper level than just be wary of some emoji codes or be wary of particular language. If that's helpful for you, go and learn a little bit more about the manosphere and the kind of things that you might need to look out for. But I think it's about, especially for young and vulnerable people, helping them find the right community that is giving them what they really need. Because what are they really going into this looking for? They're looking for support, for connection, to find their people. So I'm thinking that this is what they need, not a community that is sadly going to exploit them. And also we need to be focusing on people who've been harmed as well. We need to keep this focus on the bigger picture. Unfortunately, there's been nobody brought to any kind of justice in this as well, which might be helpful. For instance, if Andrew Tate actually went to prison, or somebody in this, or Donald Trump actually went to, if there was repercussions. But all we're seeing is powerful men get away with this all the time. So what kind of message is that sending? So it's yeah, I'm just going to leave it as that, actually. I think this has probably been enough talking from me today. I think if you have any views about this, or if you have any thoughts on what we can do, sometimes it can feel a little bit out of our control, I think, as it needs bigger change. What can we as individuals do about this, really? My way of doing this was kind of being able to understand and then choosing to go and work in these fields as well, because there are a lot of men that want to change, their behavior if they recognize that they're doing something that's quite harmful. And I don't think this is, people aren't inherently bad. These aren't bad people doing this. It's just that there's usually a number of reasons why people go to harm others. And so I suppose my way into this was to go and help the people who want to change their behavior and want to stop harming other people. I have got various blogs on this as well about working with perpetrators and my work in that field as well, if you want to know a little bit more about that. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening to all this. Been a bit of a long one. Thanks. Bye.